teachers, Melissa Willis here from Melissa Willis Music. Today I want to share with you some of the things I do with very beginning students, very beginning online students specifically I should say. I of course do these things in person as well, but I really want to focus on the online format of teaching, since that's I think what most people have questions about. So I started a brand new 7-year-old student in June with online lessons. Someone I've never taught in person, of course. So what I wanted to do is just kind of share with you some of the things I do in these very first lessons, and then you can use them as they are helpful to you with your beginning online students. So one thing I should clarify is that these materials that you see me using, I have a set here to use so they can see me use them, but I also make sure that they have a set on their end, and that's really what I found works best with beginning students, like in the 7 to 9-year-old range especially, that they have manipulatives and things to touch and use on their end, that they have those same things that I have on my end. So today I just want to go over sort of a fun creative activity these students really like to use that works. It works a little bit on left hand, right hand. It works on finding their way around the black keys from a very first lesson, and also helps them learn their finger numbers. So I just made these out of index cards. I just cut an index card in half, or actually I folded them in half and wrote numbers on each side and then kind of cut them and then laminated them. I'll get up close because there's a glare coming from the window there. So I did lots of 2s, 3s, and 4s because obviously those are really great for black keys. I included in the set that I sent my student and that I have some 1s and 5s, so when we transition to white keys we can keep using these. And then I made two right hand and 2 left hand symbols so we can indicate that. And then I have some little cards that indicate 3 black keys or 2 black keys for when we do just black key things. So these cards, not only do they help them think about where they want to play on the keys, but it also teaches them when they're starting to look at their music what things they're going to look for. So I'll try to give you an idea of how to use these. So I always ask my students, you know, would you like to make some of your own music? And of course they're like, yes, that would be so fun. So this lets them compose a little bit, but really it has that hidden feature of really getting them used to learning their finger numbers, especially the differences between 2s and 4s, and lets them really think through right hand and left hand, and is it on 2 black keys or is it on 3 black keys? So this can be a very first lesson activity. So just to give you an example, I'll kind of try to, I don't know if you can see very well with the, oh there we go, with the glare. So maybe I would ask the student to pick. I wouldn't even really instruct them. I would say, you know, so do you want the right hand or the left hand to do your melody first? Maybe they say right hand, so they'll pick up their RH. Then I'll say, do you want to do 2 black key group or 3 black key group? And maybe the student chooses a 2 black key group, so then we could put that there. And then I would say, well, just make a pattern. I would usually give them some parameters, because if you don't, you know, they'll have like 12 numbers lined up. They don't have that many cards, but I would say, well, why don't you pick a pattern of 4 finger numbers? So maybe they'll choose, so I've got 2, 2, 3, 3. So maybe that's their first pattern. So then I would say, okay, so get your right hand up, find any 2 black keys. It doesn't matter whether they go high or low. And then they could just play 2, 3, 3. You can have them say the numbers. If they play it in the middle, you could say, well, why don't you try playing it up high like you're a teeny tiny mouse? And you can start to get them thinking about sound. You could say, well, what if you're a really big elephant? And then they can go down low. So you can do lots of things with that. You can do different dynamics. There's lots of different ways to use these cards to start getting them thinking creatively, besides just, you know, reading finger numbers. So you can really have fun with these. And of course, another thing you could do is, I'm going to move these down, is you can have them switch hands. You can say, okay, so your right hand's going to play that. Let's give your left hand something to play. So then they would get out their LH, And for now, I would say, well, let's just stay on the 2 black keys. So we'll put our LH there. And then they can pick some left-hand finger numbers. So I've got 2, 3, 2, 3. So you could just have them try the left-hand side. 2, 3, 3. And then you could try it together. So they have both their hands up. 2, 3, 3. Like that. So it's a really very much an interactive activity. So the only reason the screen is there is because that's how you're communicating, but it's not using anything digital. So I like that, again, it's very manipulative and lets them really kind of think through things and be creative without using a screen for that creativity, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how I like to keep things as much as possible, especially in the really early stages, because they're getting so much screen time. Maybe a little less now, but there's been so much screen time with online learning in all their classes, so this just gets them a little bit away from that, and you can kind of coach them along. So I really like these. You could easily, my students actually have little cards like this too with dynamics. There's just so many different ways you can do this. Some students will just like mixing them up and doing different things. Some students will even like writing their melodies down on a sheet of paper. So it's just, it's a great way to learn about finger numbers. It's a great way to get moving around the keyboard. And it's a great way to get them thinking about composing from the very beginning. So as you get farther along, that's just a familiar activity and just part of the process, which I think is so important. And at least for me, that was something I didn't really, it wasn't a big thing when I was learning piano back in the 70s. In the early 80s, composing wasn't something that happened. So, and I think now there's more of a trend to do more of those kinds of things, and this is a great, easy way to introduce that from the very first lesson. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, super easy index cards that are just laminated. So, someday I hope to maybe have something a little bit more colorful and a little bit more festive looking, but for now, it's just very simple. You could even use a colorful marker. I just used black on white, but you could use colorful index cards. There are just lots of different ways you could change it up if you wanted to that are simple. So, happy teaching!